Singapore. So before we proceed to first story, let me show you a quick video about the history of Singapore.
Striding the aquatic crossroads connecting the two most populous regions on Earth, this small nation, lacking any significant natural resources or fertile land, has become an economic colossus, transforming this once remote island from mangrove to metropolis. The story of Singapore begins when a prince from the Srivijaya Empire took refuge on the island after a particularly bad storm. While hunting, he spotted a lion, which he took as a good omen and decided to build a city there, calling it Lion City, or Singapore. The pre-existing trading settlement of Temasek on the island was incorporated into the Kingdom of Singapore. Over the next 100 years, Singapore would become a prosperous trading city with strong kings. They developed strong trading ties with the Mongol Yuan dynasty in China. However, both the growing Majapahit Empire, based on the island of Java in the south, and the Kingdom of Ayutthaya in the north, both claimed the city as their own, and would both lay siege to Singapore. In 1398, it would be burnt to the ground. The last Raja of the Kingdom of Singapore would escape to the north, and found the Malacca Sultanate, converting from Hinduism to Islam. As a bustling international trading hub, Malacca emerged as a center for Islamic learning, dissemination, and encouraged the development of the Malay language, literature, culture, and arts. Malay became the lingua franca for the maritime Southeast Asia during this period, and the old settlement of Temasek was revitalized. This golden age came to an end when the Portuguese arrived and conquered Malacca. The Sultan's son would flee to Sumatra and found the Johor Sultanate, which Singapore was part of. In 1613, the Portuguese would burn the city to its foundations yet again, and the city was completely depopulated and would fall into obscurity for more than 200 years. During the Napoleonic Wars, the British were able to challenge the Dutch for supremacy in the region. It was then that Stamford Raffles established the trading post and port of Singapore. The son of a British sea captain, he joined the East India Company at the age of 14 as an office boy. By the age of 24, he had learned the local languages in and around Malaya and was promoted to governor of Java at the age of 30. There, he outlawed slavery in the former Dutch colony and encouraged private property ownership. In 1819, he entered into a contract with the Sultan of Johor for the sale of the island of Singapore to the East India Trading Company for the sum of 60,000 Spanish reales. In 1826, Singapore would be joined together with Malacca and Penang to form the Straits Settlements. The unprecedented free market policies that Raffles implemented attracted massive amounts of maritime traffic and migrants. In his first 5 years, the island's population increased from 1 to 10,000, and over 100,000 in its first 50 years. There was no import tax, income tax, or corporate tax.
Our topic outline is Fiction 1, entitled Grandfather's Story, Poem 1, The Exile, and the Poem 2, entitled The Sunflowers for a Friend.
Our first story, Fiction 1, The Grandfather's Story. And our objectives: determine the meaning of unfamiliar words through context clues, relate Karen Horney's personality types to character development in fiction, evaluate the effectiveness of approaches to human characterization in presenting human facsimiles in fiction, and last, analyze how the traits and actions of fictional characters are. Pre-reading activity. Read and analyze the following sentences carefully. Determine the meaning of each underlined word by selecting its synonym from the given word bank. Write your answer on the space provided before each item. Number 1. One of my grandmother's atrocities to her servant is hurling a durian at the maid's head. The underlined word is atrocities, and its synonym is cruelties. Number 2. She bought infants and reared them to be bandmates working endlessly in a garment factory without any compensation. The underlined word is bandmaids, and the synonym is slaves. Number 3. Husbands who were unfaithful and not loyal to their wives live with their concubines. The underlined word is concubines, and the synonym is mistress. Number 4, the virulence of their hatred toward one another resulted to their painful separation. The underlined word is virulence and its synonym is severity. Number 5, he was inconsolable when his partner left him for another man. The underlined word is inconsolable, meaning heartbroken. Complete the given illustration by supplying the word appropriate for each box. Select the words to complete the illustration from the word bank and answer the questions that follow. Grandmother aggressive, murderous, single-minded, atrocious. Grandfather detached, grief stricken, inconsolable, withdrawn. Grandaunt compliant, barren, gentle-looking, soft-spoken. Illustration: Three types of personalities from Karen Horney's socio-psychological theory. Number 1 question: what are the types of personality shown in the illustration? Describe each. Atrocious, meaning extremely weak, brutal, or cruel. Inconsolable, incapable of being consoled. Grief-stricken, overcome with deep sorrow. Soft-spoken, having a mild or gentle voice. Gentle-looking, someone who is kind, mild, and calm. Single-minded, having one driving purpose or resolved, determined, and dedicated. Murderous, having the purpose or capability of murder. Barren, incapable of producing offspring, used especially of females or matings. Withdrawn, removed from immediate contact or easy approach. Looking at a typical Filipino family, are these personality types properly ascribed to the family members they represent? Why not? Yes, because the action of the characters are described their characteristic by the author. What do you think will happen if these people with personality types lives together in the same house? If people with this kind of personality types lives together in the same house, it is not happy to live with. There will be no approaches with one another. The house will be full of anger, misunderstandings, and problems. There will be no progress in life and happiness wouldn't feel even they were together. While reading activity, read Catherine Lim's grandfather's story and pay attention to the words that are associated with each given character below. Complete the table by listing the action words attributed to these characters and determine their traits as revealed by the words attributed. Number 1 character is grandmother. Action words associated with these characters: it was rumored that one handmaid had died from injuries sustained when grandmother flung a durian at her. The punishment that grandmother regularly meted out were less dramatic. She pinched, hit the knuckles with a wooden rod, slapped and occasionally rubbed chili paste against the lips of a child bandmaid who had been caught telling a lie. She had put her life with grandfather behind her. From that day, he was dead to her, and she pursued her business with single-minded purpose and fervor, getting rich very quickly. She had canny business sense and invested wisely in rubber and coconut plantation. What do they reveal about these characters? Aggressive, evil, brutal, selfish. The next character, grandfather. Action words associated with this character: grandfather holding his grip at grandaunt's funeral and was inconsolable for months. He became withdrawn and reticent and sometimes wept with the abandon of a child in the silence of the night. What do they reveal about these characters? Remorseful, lonely, loving to his true beloved. The last character, grandaunt. Action words associated with this character: I remember she took out a small bottle of pungent smelling oil from her blouse pocket and rubbed a little under my nose when she saw me cough and sniffle. What do they reveal about these characters? Good, pure-hearted, caring. Analyze the complete table above. Based on the character traits revealed through word association, infer who among the given character would likely do the following. Write your answer in the space provided before each item. Number 1. Reminiscing loved one by listening to music alone. The answer is grandfather. Number 2, slapping an enemy with a hard object. The answer, grandmother. Number 3, fulfilling a request from someone. The answer is grandaunt. Number 4, annihilating a business rival with absurd tactics. The answer, grandmother. Number 5, staring on a picture to recall memories of loved one. The answer, grandfather. Here the grandfather's story summary. Grandmother died when I was 10. It was rumored that one handmaid had died from injuries sustained when grandmother flung a durian at her. The bandmaid was certainly dead at 15 and quietly buried at night. Grandfather, who had been separated from grandmother for as long as anyone could remember, often said, "Look at her hands. Look at the strength and power in them. The hands of a murderess." Grandmother did not like children, and I remember asking her one day why I never saw grandfather with her. She refrained from answering my question, but she threw me such an angry glare. Grandmother and grandfather hated each other right from the beginning of their marriage. It was an arranged marriage. Grandfather took up residence with a mistress because grandmother, as said, was a baron. Grandaunt, a very gentle-looking, soft-spoken woman, became old and gray. Grandfather holding his grip at grandaunt's funeral and was inconsolable for months. He became withdrawn and reticent and sometimes wept with the abandon of a child in the silence of the night. Grandfather liked to tell stories, especially irreverently obscene tale of monks. Once upon a time, he started. A very long time ago, perhaps 1,000 years ago, there lived in China a farmer and his wife. He loved her dearly, for she was a gentle, loving woman who could do anything to make him comfortable and happy. They had no children. The woman's barrenness, which would have compelled any husband to reject her, did not in the least irk him. He worked hard to save for their old age, knowing no sons would be born to look after them, and he and his wife watched with satisfaction the silver coins growing in the old stone jar, which they took care to hide in a hole in the earthen floor. There were a farmer, his wife, and a nun in the story. When the wife of the farmer left and came back, she told what had happened in her extreme naive, expecting him to praise her for what she had done. She was hit repeatedly. The farmer saw his wife's dead body. He knew he would never be at peace until he had killed the one who had brought about this tragedy. He ran to the nunnery with his trunk full, and there struck 3 hefty blows on the nun's head until she fell down and died. In his panic, the farmer ran to a tree and hung himself. The spirits of the 3 deceased then appeared before the Almighty, who sat on his heavenly throne in judgment. "You have done great wrong," he told the farmer, "and must therefore be punished. You," turning to the nun, "have done greater wrong, for you are a selfish, mercenary, cruel woman. You too will be punished." He looked at the farmer's wife. "You're a good woman," he said. "I'm sending the 3 of you back to earth." So the 3 were reborn on earth, and the Almighty's plan for them came to pass. Grandfather finished his story and shuffled back to his room, smoking his opium pipe. He paused before entering his room to continue. "The woman much beloved by the man was to die soon, and he will shortly follow. For them, there will no longer be pain of another rebirth." Post-reading activity. Characterization. Number 1. How does the author create a vivid illustration of the different personalities of grandmother, grandfather, and grandaunt? For me, the author used vivid illustration as a way of showing the different personality of the character in the story. The author gives of each character that readers easily recognize who refers to those situations. Of the 2 approaches to characterization that the author employs in presenting her major characters, which do you think is more effective? Why? In 2 approaches to characterize the major characters that the author employs effectively, was the direct presentation because it's directly out about the characters and it reveals the traits of a character in a straightforward manner. It also helps readers understand the type of character they are going to read about. Number 3. What effect does the combination of two approaches to characterization create in presenting grandmother's personality? I guess the effect of combination of two approaches helps more easily recognize the personality of grandmother because like I said in previous number, direct presentation was straightforward about the character, then additionally, indirect presentation is about character actions. This is presented in the story. Things to remember. Author present their character either directly or indirectly. The direct presentation, the author tells us straight out by exposition or analysis what a character is like or has someone in the story tell us what he is like. The indirect presentation, the author shows us the character in action. We infer what he is like from what he thinks or says or does. How character is disclosed in fiction, the action. What the characters do is the best clue to understand what they are. Descriptions, both personal and environmental appearance and environment, reveal much about character's social and economic status, of course, but also they tell us about character traits. C. Dramatic statements and thoughts. Although the speeches of most characters are functional, essential to keep the action moving along, they provide material by which you may draw conclusion. Letter D. Statements by other characters. By studying what characters say about each other, you may enhance your understanding of the character being discussed. Lastly, statements by the author speaking as a storyteller or observer. What the author is speaking with the authorial voice says about a character is usually accurate and the authorial voice can be accepted factually. Literary approach, psychological criticism. Number 1. What can possibly be the reason for the grandmother's hostility towards her bandmates? Does her cold relationship with grandfather contribute to her being hostile? Why? I think the reason for the hostility of grandmothers toward her bandmates is that she wants to prove to everyone that she doesn't need anyone to get rich and the servant is a servant who doesn't need to be treated properly. And yes, the relationship with her grandfather contributes because she doesn't want her situation to be arranged marriage. She doesn't want the responsibility. She feels like it's only a duty. Number 2. When grandaunt died, grandfather suddenly became remorseful and detached from others. How does offering a story to children help him overcome such agony? What does the concluding statement in his story mean? How does it relate to his feelings? The offering a story to children will help for grandfather to overcome his feeling and agony after grandaunt died because his time and attention was focused on storytelling and it helped to avoid thinking about the grandaunt's death.
Poem 1. Objectives. Determine the synonyms of the given phrases. React on an issue involving opposition of views in social media. Infer the subject reaction on the lines of the poem read. Determine the theme of the poem. The Exile by Edwin Tambo. Relate the theme of the poem to the historical event. Pre-reading activity. Examine the given phrases in the first column and locate their respective meaning in the second column by drawing lines to connect the dots between synonym phrases. The first one is ancestral agony, means inherited pain. The China growth means aggressive plan. Gunboat policy is a communist cause. And Confucian smile is benevolent response. We possess ideologies that can shape the way we think around us and eventually influence our action. However, not all of us agree with the same ideology as we think differently depending on our beliefs and preferences. Examine this screenshot from an online news website and answer the question that follows. Sa screenshot ng article, we can see nag-aaway po ang mga tao kung sino ba talaga ang may kasalanan, yung bang na-rape o yung nang-rape. Sabi ng isa ay yung nang-rape kasi lahat naman tayo may karapatang magsuot ng kung anong gusto natin. At kapag intensyon ng isang tao na gumawa ng masama, kahit balot na or kahit ano pang suot mo, gagawin pa rin nila yun. Wala silang pinipili, bata man o matanda. But doon sa isa naman ay kasalanang na rape kasi nagsusuot sila ng malaswang damit na pinupukaw ang mga pagnanasa ng mga manyakis o rapist. Para sa akin, ang may kasalanan ay yun ng rape. Kasi kahit hindi malaswa ang damit ng isang tao, na-rape pa rin. Minsan kahit sanggol, hindi na pinalampas. Hindi kasalanan ng mga babae kung magsuot sila ng mga damit na nagpapaboost ng kanilang confidence. Ang sabi nga ng isa dito, stop teaching girls how to dress. Teach people not to rape. Guide question number 1. Opposing views is becoming rampant in social media platform. How would you feel when someone opposes your thoughts or view? When someone disagreed with my ideas or point of view, my first instinct is to be upset, but I quickly realized that we cannot control other people's mind, no matter what they say or do. The only thing that matters is that I believe in myself, and no one can make me believe otherwise. I also cannot compel them to accept my viewpoint. We have to deal with their opinion even if it opposes ours, as long as it doesn't affect our personal and mental health. Number 2. What will happen if you side ng community wherein people have the extreme opposite of your views and beliefs about life and living? How would you deal with the opposition? We think differently. We have our different views and opinions about everything. It happened to me when I need to reside in community where people have the extreme opposite of what I'm thinking, my views and my opinions about life and living. I will respect their own views so they will do the same. Will not force them to believe because they will refuse to acknowledge it. Even if I explain that this may believe, they will not disagree because they have their own opinions or beliefs. Why reading activity? Read or listen to Edwin Tambo, The Exile, and assume that the speaker of the poem is directly addressing his subject. How would this subject react upon hearing this line from the poem? Infer his reaction by selecting a statement from the given choices and speak vowel towards each number group of lines. Explain your answer. Edwin Tambo, born on November 22, 1933, a Singaporean poet and academic who is regarded as one of pioneers of English literature in Singapore. Tambo poetry is inspired by myth and history and is often dubbed Singapore unofficial poet laureate because of his poem with nationalistic theme.
He was not made for politics, for change of principles, unhappy days, major sacrifice. Even a bit part in a tragedy seemed most unlikely. There was in him a cool confusion smile. Some suitable history would have been a place in the family bank, consolidated by a careful match, a notable gain in family wealth, a strengthening of the clan, and ordinary life, ordinary longevity. Of these things his father sadly dreams. He was not made for politics, but those days were China wrought, uncertain of loyalties, full of the search for a soul, a pride, out of ancestral agony, gunboat policy, the nations breaking up, the disaster of the Kuomintang. The new people took him in to cells, discussions, exciting oratory, gave him a cause. Work quietly, multiply the cells, prepare for the bloom of 100 flowers. Flowers came, fast withereth too. Made conspicuous by principles and the discipline of the group, he thought to stand his ground, defy the law. Reactionaries, he said. And so he stood in the dock. Many documents were read. Those who planned the demonstrations allotted tasks had run to fight another day. They had important work, could not be spared. One need to arrange more demonstrations. Impersonally, the verdict was exile to the motherland, a new reality. He stood, pale, not brave, not made for politics.
Post-reading activity theme. Number 1. What are the instances cited that prove that the subject of the poem does not care about politicizes his ideology? What proof that the persona in the poem does not care about politics is that he is fighting for his principle and aspiration, not to politicize, but to show other people that they have to fight and stand on what is right. His belief cannot be matched by the amount of money and does not care if opposed by other people as long as for him he will stand. What does Confucius smile in line 6 means? How that is related to his inability to politicize his ideology. Confucius smile in line 6 means benevolent response. To relate it with his inability to politicize his ideology, he just chooses to not be affected by what he hear or see. His ideology in politics is based on his point of view. Number 3. What do you think could have happened if he had politicized his ideology by re-announcing it? He may be judged by other people if he had politicized his ideology by re-announcing it. It may be changed his point of view by hearing different point of view from others. Number 4. Which event had caused his imprisonment? What does he realize? The incident that led to his imprisonment was during the times he stood as a candidate, but unfortunately, he was defeated. Because of the defeat, he was imprisoned, and after the imprisonment, he was released. He went to a place and studied there, and he became a good and wise lawyer, which led him to fight for his principle and aspiration in life. He realized that as a lawyer, the work should be done not for money, but to fight for what is right and what is fair. Number 5. As a result of his realization, what action does he make and what consequences does he encounter from his action? He fought his politicizing ideology, which many people oppose. He's fighting for his principle and aspiration not to politicize them, but to prove to others that they must fight for and stand for what is right. His belief cannot be matched by any amount of money, and he does not care if he opposed by others. Number 6. What does the poem reveal about individuals whose ideologies are in contrast encounter they are living? Even if many people disagree with you, stand up for your beliefs, fight for what is right. The repatriation of the Chinese as a counterinsurgency policy during the Malayan Emergency. During the Malayan Emergency, British High Commissioner Henry Gorney pushed the policy of repatriating to China thousands of alien Chinese detainees suspected of supporting the Malayan Communist Party guerrilla war. This article traces the stages of this controversial policy, which despite obstacles remained key counter-insurgency strategies until 1953. But the policy ignored the civil war in China and risked jeopardizing Sino-British relations. When China closed its port, the British administration put forth more desperate proposals to continue repatriation, often in the face of Foreign Office objection, ranging from renegotiation with the PRC to dubbing deportee on the coast of China and even approaching the Formosa government. Yet, while the Chinese were the target of both harsh early counterinsurgency techniques and communist violence. Time. Repatriation policy was replaced by the mass settlement of squatters in Malayan itself. The Chinese were given a path of citizenship, changing their political future and that for the nation.
So next is poem 2 entitled Sunflowers for a Friend. So objectives is to determine the meaning of the unfamiliar words through context clues, interpret the message of a 1-minute video on a prevailing social problem, and then analyze the idea conveyed in each stanza of these groupings. Pre-reading activity. Read the given statement and select a term from the word bank that can best replace each italicized word and explain your answer. So, Stop calling a child a reprobate even though his or her little actions may slightly be gibberish, for he or she is a flower still in the process of blooming. Transgressors of child rights should not stop this aberration. So, ang mga given sa word bank is anomaly, rascal, nonsense, and violator. So, ang sagot ko dun sa mga papalit is, sa reprobate is rascal. Because reprobate is rejected as worthless or not standing a test. And rascal is same. It is unprincipled or dishonest person. Next is gibberish naman dun sa nonsense. Gibberish is a nonsense sounds of writing. Then nonsense is a spoken or written words that have no meaning or make no sense. They have same meanings. Then sa transgressors naman is violators. So it is someone who violates a law or command, and also a person who breaks or fails to comply with a rule. Then next is dun naman sa aberration is anomaly. Because aberration is a state or condition markedly different from the norm. And yung anomaly naman is something that deviates from what is standard, normal, or expected. Watch and analyze the 1-minute video provided in the link below and answer the questions that follow.
How are ya? Good to see ya.
Hope you've been a good boy for Mummy.
Yes, Dad.
How was your Rotary Club meeting today?
Fine. It's cold. It's got no taste.
I would order to come over this. Oh, shut up! The dog eats better than this. The dog eats better than this. Get up! Get up! Get up! How many times have I told you to clean up this mess? You're useless.
After watching the video, let's proceed by answering the questions that given below. So first is, what kind of violence has the child witnessed? So the kind of violence has the child witnessed are, first, domestic violence is any kind of behavior that a person uses or threatens to use to control an intimate partner. So the two key elements are threat and control. So domestic violence can take various forms like physical. So yung physical is a violent action such as hitting, beating, pushing, and kicking. In many cases, physical abuse becomes more frequent and severe over time. So, yung other various forms is sexual, psychological, emotional, and economic. Next is, how do you think can this violence affect him as a child? So, it affects the children because they carry it until they grow up, and they say that what the parents see is what the children will imitate. It also leaves a trauma in a child. While reading the activity, netizens often attach hashtag to a phrase to identify messages for specific topic. They tend to summarize or advocate their ideas about this specific topic, which allows them to participate in global discussion over social media platforms. So read and analyze Li Supeng's Sunflowers for a print and select from the given choices a hashtag that can best describe the idea conveyed in each stanza Also explain your answer. So, bago natin gawin to, is kilalanin muna natin ang sumulat ng tula. So, sino nga ba si Li Peng? Li Peng was born on May 13, 1946. She is a Singaporean poet, so she has 5 volumes of poems to her name. Of this, the first 3 is a Prospect of a Drowning noong 1980. Next is Against the Next Wave, 1988, and The Brink of an Amen, 1991. We were winners of the National Book Development Council of Singapore Award. So after converting to Catholicism, Li Peng added Anne to her name to reflect her new faith. So katulad siya ni Edwin Tambu, Li is often seen as one of the generation of nation-building English writers in Singapore, whose work in the 50s, 70s questioned the identity of the newly independent nation. One of her early poems is You My Country, My People, was banned by the Singapore government due to the fears that her reference to her brown skin neighbors would offend the Malay community of Singapore. So in 2014 naman, she was inducted into the Singapore Women's Hall of Fame. So, para sa mga hashtags, sa first stanza is yung hashtag Leveling Hurts Children. Because children are also emotional, so we need to give them love that they deserve. Next stanza is yung hashtag Fight Child Abuse. Continue to cultivate this love because these children should be protected too. Next, the third stanza is hashtag Children Are Vulnerable. Emotion makes children vulnerable, so understanding them is better. Next is fourth stanza is hashtag There is Hope. There is always hope that child abuse will lessen. Next is the fifth stanza, hashtag Silver Lining Finding Positivity. Staying on the bright side of the life is the best way to make and give children what they truly deserve. Post-reading activity. So first question is, what instance of verbal abuse to children is illustrated in the first stanza? What do you think may they feel upon experiencing this abuse? So some instance of verbal abuse in the first stanza is stupid and fool. They may feel that they are not accepted in their family. They also think that they are adopted. Next question is, the speaker describes the possible effect of this abuse as a venom of human tongue. So what do you think is the reason for such description? The speaker describes the possible effect of this abuse as a venom of human tongue. Venom of a human tongue, we all know that a venom can kill a person. So the venom of a human tongue can kill a person from the inside. It can also be connected to the saying, words cuts deeper than a knife. When words are fueled with emotions, it literally can affect another person. Next question is, what long-term psychological effects may this abuse bring to children? How do you think may these children react to such adverse effects? So the children that were mentally and verbally abused will be having some troubles when it comes to communicating with other people. The abuse will definitely leave a mark and scar in their minds. In result, the children may grow up without having someone to rely on. Next question is, what action does the speaker want the readers to make to stop child abuse? Can this action mitigate this social problem? Why? So the speaker wants to bring justice to those who experience such abuse. Maybe, or because not everyone who is punished changes. Next question is examine the metaphorical statement in the last stanza. What does it suggest about helping children who had experienced abuse? How can the sufferings of these children from such abuses be healed? So, just have the courage to believe in God. Also, pray always. They suffer through their thinking because they do not understand why they are being abused. It can also be treated by accepting and treating them well. Literary approach, reader response criticism. So, is the social problem depicted in the poem happening in our country? What do you observe as the prevailing form of child abuse in the country? Yes, I believe it is still happening in our country today. The most common forms of child abuse in the country are physical violence and psychological violence. And the answer for the next question is the physical and emotional harm to children resulting from the experience of violence is devastating. So the effect on the impact on children creates lasting emotional and psychological scars as well as physical pain and suffering. The damage can last a lifetime. Victims may themselves become perpetrators of violence as a result of their experiences. So the burden of violence to society is enormous. The cost of health care, child welfare support services, as well as the increased cost to the criminal justice system when child victims are at increased risk of becoming children in conflict with the law.